Welcome, everybody. It's Wednesday, so it is time for the progress report at 7 o'clock. As you may have noticed, my good friend Bob Backus is not with us. He is once again on assignment. He has been, you know what, I'm going to, wrong one. I see what we're doing. I'm going to slide this way a little bit. We didn't block the shot. There we go. I want to try to get that microphone out of the shot. There we go. All right, well, welcome to the Progress Report. It is the last Wednesday in the month of September, and as you've heard Bob say, I think 3 or 4 times, September is not long enough. But as we know, 30 days has September, and that's coming up, and we're almost done. And then we get into the spooky month of October and leaf peeping and everything else, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We are here. We have a really great show lined up tonight. We are still in our candidate season, and we have a great candidate for school board at large who's going to be in. I'm going to tease it that way. Hope you guys stick around. But before we get to that, something very, very remarkable happened, something good, I think, after our last show. One of our viewers wrote a letter to Bob Backus, and it was a critical letter. It criticized some things that I did, but it was very, very respectful. And when Bob told me about it, I think he might have thought I might get a little irritated, but actually I'm thrilled. I think that what was in this letter is the kind of dialogue that I think is very important in politics and that maybe we've lost. I'm not going to reveal who the writer was, but I do know who. I believe we served in the legislature together several years ago. I think I know who it is. But I'm going to very quickly read the salient parts of the letter, and then I want to take a minute to address them. It starts off, to Robert Backus. Dear Bob, I watched your program with Mike Farley, Pat Long, and another gentleman the night after the mayoral election results. I like to watch the progress report when I am able. You have some good guests and great discussions. You always are considerate to callers and respectful of their opinions, even when you disagree. I found the general discussion regarding the election results to be very interesting despite the disgraceful turnout at the polls. I was, however, most disappointed this week by the comments made during the discussion by Mike Farley, yours truly, who called out a candidate as a radical white supremacist with a MAGA hat or something to that effect. I almost called into the program to call Mike out on his comments, but I didn't want to spoil the rest of the discussion, so I'm writing to you now to ask you to please speak with him about his comments. And she goes on, I got to keep going just to give it the full contents. Anybody who takes the leap to be a candidate in an election is to be respected, regardless of the political affiliations or beliefs. The forum to discuss his or her goals should not include a personal attack on that candidate or the general public who may or may not be affiliated with a certain political party. Platforms are always open for discussion, but name-calling or labeling voters does not promote civil discourse. Not everyone who wears a MAGA hat or supported Donald Trump is a white supremacist, any more than people who supported Joe Biden are part of the KKK, thinking of Senator Byrd, or communists. I think these types of statements are filled with vitriol and contempt and show a lack of consideration of the diversity that showcases our individual freedoms in America, like the First Amendment. There was another couple paragraphs that reiterated that, and I didn't mean to rush through it, but we are pressed for time. I certainly respect and agree with the sentiment expressed in that letter, and I am grateful for the viewer for writing in, because this dialogue is important. I do want to point out, though, I don't believe that I was engaged in what I would consider to be name-calling. We talk about platforms, and it really was talking about the issues. The candidate that I spoke about was the current alderman, will be or will be the new short-term alderman for Ward 8, Alderman Sapienza, and he was wearing a MAGA hat at the polls, and my comment was meant to reflect that, because I believe, and I think there's evidence for that the MAGA hat is the modern white hood. It's a dog whistle. It signals to people, and it was intended at that location at that time to signal to people, hey, I sympathize with the president to make America great again. And we know from Charlottesville and many other facts that the president is a white supremacist. That is my opinion, and I'm entitled to it. And there's evidence to back it up. Now, she mentioned platforms right here. The Republican Party abandoned their platform in 2020, instead issuing a statement that they would follow Donald Trump. Now, if Donald Trump is a white supremacist, as he has exhibited, and the Republican Party platform is that they follow that, then I am perfectly within my rights to say that someone who is wearing a MAGA hat is showing sympathy for white supremacy. And I'm not trying to double down. I'm trying to explain why I said what I said. I didn't call him names about his looks or about his ethnicity or anything else. I'm calling out his politics. Now, that might be uncomfortable for some Republicans who say, but there are good Republicans who aren't white supremacists. Well, then they have to look in the mirror and check themselves and find out whether they want to be this kind of Republican, because this is what the Republican Party is, in my humble opinion. Now, enough about that. Thank you very much for the write-in. We have a Facebook page. If you want to continue the dialogue, I'm willing to do it, or if anyone else would like to engage me in that in a respectful way, I'm perfectly willing to do that. I'm not trying to hurt feelings, but sometimes the truth hurts, and that's where I'm going with it. So, turn the page. We now are going to talk to one of the greatest candidates ever to come down the pike in the city of Manchester. We have a great candidate running to volunteer and serve the city of Manchester in the capacity of school board member at large, or as we call it, Board of School Committee member at large, Peter Argyropoulos. Big round of applause.
Thank you.
Peter, welcome to the show. We are very glad to have you here. This is your first time on the show, and we hope that we can make you feel like it's your home.
For sure. Yeah, well, absolutely. And thanks for that extremely warm welcome, Mike. That was very kind of you to say that. I don't know if it's true, but I hope to work towards that. So yeah, I'm super excited to be here tonight. I think any time that you can get in front of an audience in a place when you are running to become an elected official is important, because being able to share your ideas, have people understand what it is that you are trying to do in the community that you would be serving, I think is critical. So I'm excited to be here tonight. I'm excited to have some conversations about my campaign, where we've been so far, looking at where we're going to be going coming up here in the next couple of weeks before the election. Yesterday was 5 weeks until the general election, so it'll be coming here before you know it. And I'm also excited to talk about some of the things that we hope to be able to achieve should we be fortunate enough to be elected by the voters in the city for the students and families here in Manchester.
Well, heck, you just ran through the agenda of the show. I can go take a powder and you can just get going, but we definitely want to do that. But first, I always say on this show, it's people that make the difference. The world happens because people do things that make those things happen. It's always the individual behind it. You're not just a candidate. You're a guy. You have family. You have background. You have aspirations, and I want to learn a little bit more about that. And I want to introduce you to the viewers. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your background. How did you end up as a politician in Manchester? And give us as much detail as you're comfortable giving.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I'd be excited to. So my name is Peter Argyropoulos, which it's always important to say the last name, I feel like, because it is a little bit tougher to say at times, that long Greek last name. But I am a product.
It's just a matter of syllables.
That's what it is. You just sound it out. So, lifelong resident here in the city of Manchester. I was born and raised here. I attended the public schools here, Jewett Street Elementary School, Southside Middle School, and then I graduated from Memorial High School.
You're from my neighborhood.
Yeah.
You're talking my education. Yeah. Excellent. Glad to know that.
Absolutely.
Just so people know, Peter and I have not been acquainted before, so I'm getting to know him just like you are as we go through here. So excellent.
So, grew up in Ward 9, not too far, actually, right up the street from Memorial in a way, which was kind of cool to have my community all right in one place. I stayed on one block the entire tenure of my public school education career. And then after graduating Memorial High School, I went to UNH in Durham, the University of New Hampshire, where I attended, earned my undergraduate degree in biology, and then my master's degree in education. And I spent my master's year at Central High School as an intern, so working there for the year. The way they set up their program is you're in a classroom from day one, really getting in with the teachers, learning every in and out of the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and whatnot until you get towards the end of the year there and end in April. And then from there, I ended up, and now I'm a teacher in the city of Nashua. I teach 7th grade science, which I absolutely love, but I also just recently, a little over a year ago now, bought my first home here in the city of Manchester with my now wife. We got married in July of this past year. And
well, congratulations!
Thank
a
you
lot of
very much.
Milestones you're hitting, and then you decided my new life is not cluttered and busy enough that I want to go. And put in the full-time effort of running for school board, not in my ward. I'm going to take on the whole city. What prompted that idea?
You know, it sounds simple, and you hear things like this all the time, but I'm extremely proud of my community here in Manchester. I'm proud to be a product of the Manchester School District, as I said, and I was inspired to go into teaching in the first place because I had so many positive experiences in school with my peers and my teachers and all the staff at the school.
Did you have a favorite teacher that you can look back to?
I do. And my favorite
Would you be
teacher.
willing to share that with us? Who was your favorite teacher?
So I had so many great ones, but my biology teacher sophomore year, she made a huge difference, and was actually the reason I decided to go into biology specifically. So that's what I ended up choosing that year. Was the year I was like, you know what, I really love this class, and it was such an engaging class. And she really worked hard, day in and day out. You could see preparing her lessons, coming up with labs that were engaging, things that would really keep a student interested in the lesson, while also still covering the content that you need to and working on the skills you need to. So all of those things in that class really helped inspire me amongst, like I said, tons of other teachers. I could sit here and list every single teacher I've ever had and all the positive things that came out of each class. But that teacher specifically was one that really resonated with me and helped push me into deciding, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is the subject I want to be in. And this is what I'm going to pursue. And I'm so glad I did, because I say all the time, I am in the best profession in the world. And that's nothing against all the other professions, because they're just one. But I love waking up every morning and being able to get dressed and go to school and work with students and see them on a day in and day out basis working and progressing. And being there to help them through that process, which is so critical in their lives, of being able to progress and get a little bit better every single day, both socially, emotionally, academically, all of these components that you get to achieve throughout your educational career. And it's something I love and I enjoy, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Well, I sidetracked my own question, though, but that's a great answer, and I think we learned a little bit about you in that answer, and so I'm happy we went in that direction. But I do want to get back.
Absolutely.
Okay, you bought a house, you're a newlywed, you're embarking on a career as a teacher, which is an extremely time-consuming career. Don't let those people who want to badmouth teachers fool you. The teachers work very hard. My mom was a college professor. I get it. But what made you say, okay, I want to, in addition to all this, you're not giving any of that up. I want to go and commit to working on public education policy in the city of Manchester. And again, why not just in the ward? Why jump into politics with both feet at the deep end?
Sure. What a great question. Yeah. And like I was starting to say a couple minutes ago, it really comes down to I enjoy helping students and I like working and helping families. I'm passionate about this community. Where I was starting to go with, we set down our roots here in Manchester. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. And to be able to now give back to this community that has put so much and helped me in so many ways progress in my life, it really means something to me. So being able to run and jump into this race in a time where we're facing a lot of different things going on in the field of education, I feel like is extremely critical. And I feel like myself as a teacher, someone who's there on the front lines day in and day out working with students and families and seeing how that partakes in class, seeing the effects of public education and the decisions that a school board makes have on those students and families. I believe that having those experiences and having these understandings would be an asset to the city and to the students and the families in the community of Manchester. And because of that, I wanted to really step up and run for office to be able to potentially win this spot and be able to help the students, not in the exact same way as a teacher, but in the ways of overseeing the resources and means and things that we can provide to our students and teachers and families so that they can improve our educational process every day and make sure Manchester is a place that families want to come to and raise their children and send them to our public school system here in the city.
Okay, and I understand those sentiments because I had the same sentiments, when I was your age. I still do. But there's many things that you can do with those sentiments. You can go work for another candidate. And again, I'm going to press you on this. You could go and run in a ward where you only have to pick up maybe 1,000, 1,200 votes and you can be victorious. Or you can say, I'm going to take on the entire city. I'm going to go to all 12 wards. I'm going to have to put together a campaign that has people representing me in all these wards. I'm going to have to knock on so many more doors. What possessed you, I guess is the word, to say, no, I want the big challenge?
Yeah, and to look at it, if we simplify that down and think about impact, And it comes back to my belief that having an active teacher on the school board, somebody who is still there in the field of education, which I always say is a constantly evolving profession, everything is constantly evolving. Having that person that could potentially be on the school board making these decisions, but also as somebody that can contact with everybody in the entire city. So when you represent at large, you are responsible for being in contact. Anybody can get in touch with you and have their questions be answered, can have their concerns be expressed. And if they have me as an outlet, someone who is there as a teacher, now they have the ability to have those conversations with somebody who understands how education goes, understands how the effects of education take place for their students, for their community. So while you keep bringing up the idea of a bigger campaign or whatnot, if I were to say that is a scary notion, and I even though I believe that I could help the most people in one capacity, but I'd shy away from that because I don't think it would be a mission that would be possible to do. I don't think that's the way to look at things. I think it's much more, it's a better idea to look at it and say, how could I help people the most? And in this case, I believe running to represent the entire city would be that outlet, and I was willing to take on that
So you're
challenge.
an all-in guy. You're a go big or go home kind of guy, huh? I mean,
Yeah.
You're not intimidated.
Right. No, I like I said, I felt that the best way to help students and families in the city would be to run for this specific position, and that's why I decided to go ahead
And
with
hey,
that.
you've been successful. You were able to garner enough votes that you will be on the November ballot. What's the experience been like? As I remember it, I've been involved politically for a long time. Sometimes I'm a candidate, sometimes I'm not. I remember my first candidacies. It was scary. It was intimidating. That first door I knocked on, I was afraid they were going to throw me off their property. Tell me a little bit about how the experience has been as a new politician, as a new candidate.
Sure, absolutely. And I'll start off by saying it's been amazing. So going into this, and you're going to keep hearing me come back to this, but the reason I'm doing this is because I believe I can make decisions that are in the best interest of students and families, and be able to work with students and families in the community to help in these areas. So when looking at the campaign, I look at it from the context of I'm going to go out there and try to express to people my understanding of these things and help to explain to them where I think things would best be in the city in order to make these differences, while also being somebody who's willing to listen. I hope to pride myself on always listening to somebody, whether they share my views, whether they have different views, whether they're not sure what their views are. And I'm willing to have those conversations with people to create that dialogue that you mentioned a little bit earlier in the show. And because I feel like from that dialogue, if it is working positively, where you can understand that you might not agree on everything, while you are working through those conversations, you're going to stumble upon areas of commonality, areas that you can agree on, areas that we can find where maybe I didn't see something from that perspective, but now that you brought that to my attention, that's going to help me to have a better informed decision. And working with these people across the board, I think, is an asset and super helpful. So the campaign has been great. I've enjoyed getting out in the community that I love so much and meeting the voters, talking with the voters about all the different issues, being able to have these conversations, be able to go to door and talk with people, make these phone calls and all these things. And it's been an absolutely positive experience that I've enjoyed.
All righty, we will, as we were talking, as we were getting ready, we try to end the show talking a little bit about the campaign, and we will get back to that toward the end of the show. We've reached our first 20-minute mark. I want to remind folks, I always have to check the number, 640-3091 is the phone number to call in. We offer a 1-hour long format dialogue interview with candidates for important office. He's sitting right here. You probably won't get that opportunity ordinarily in the course of your life. So if you're watching, please call in if you've got a question or a comment, want to help guide the discussion here for us. Without Bob to keep control of things, maybe you can help keep me under control. It would be very helpful. But yeah, we love our callers. Call in 640-3091. We're going to take a very quick 30-second break just to kind of regroup. And when we get back, we'll talk a little bit about the issues that are facing the school district here in Manchester. Don't go too far, folks. We'll see you in just a couple seconds. Hello, folks. Thanks for waiting. I hope you had time to go get a sandwich or something, or some crackers and cheese, and settle in. We are now going to spend the second one-third segment of the show, kind of like a hockey game. You know, the second segment. We're going to talk about some of the issues facing Manchester and what Peter thinks the most important of those issues are. Try to see where he's coming from a political perspective, to see if you folks agree with what he's doing or his methodology or not. And I would remind folks, 640-3091 is our number. Please call in, help move the discussion along. We really appreciate it, whether you agree with us or not. So, Peter, I'll let you agenda the show here. What do you think, let's say, the three biggest issues? Let's go one at a time. We may not get to three, but what's the biggest issue you think facing Manchester schools?
Sure,
Right
and
now today?
there's kind of a lot wrapped into it. But if you were to kind of simplify it and make it one succinct kind of issue, would be providing the correct resources to our schools, to our students, to our teachers, to our families, to meet the needs of our students. And when I talk about that, to explain a little bit more, we're talking about things like in-school basic needs, things like copying machines, things like paper, things like school supplies. We're talking about things like curriculum resources that teachers need. We're talking about things like...
That's a very specialized thing. I happen to know what that term means. I have some educators in my family. Curriculum resources. Break that down a little bit for us. What are you talking about?
Sure,
And
yeah.
and by the way, I want to keep in mind, I'm going to get back. Everything that you say has a dollar bill value attached to it, so we're going to have to talk about that. But what are
Sure.
curriculum resources?
Sure. So when we're thinking about curriculum, we're thinking about the things, what we teach. We're thinking about how we teach it. And specifically in Manchester, when we're looking at our classrooms, it's always important for a teacher to go in and diagnose their classes that they have in front of them, the students they have in front of them, and get to know them. That's going to help us to kind of build the lesson plans that we have, where this curriculum kind of acts as the overarching map, the kind of what we need to have throughout the year. What are the standards attached to what we're teaching? What do we want students to know at the end of the day? What skills do we want them to
Where do we
build?
have to get with them?
Where do we have to get with them? And now to the point, too, we add in what are the social emotional needs we need our students to have as well. So all of these things are the keys, driving forces behind what we do in our classes and in our schools. So looking at the resources that we need to be able to meet those, that can range anywhere depending on the content area to, in a high school science class, we might be looking at lab materials that we need to be able to perform certain labs. Into an elementary school classroom, maybe we need to have certain types of blocks that the students can work with, manipulatives, things like that, where they can learn their basic
Okay,
math skills,
I understand.
things like
So
that.
it's actually the materials that will be used as opposed to the outline of the lesson plan. It's
Correct.
how do you perform the lesson plan?
And the lesson plan is a part of it too, to an extent, because as a school district, you always have to decide, how are we going to decide to design our curriculum plans? Are we going to go in? You have different options. You can go in, there's companies that provide curriculums. You go, you pay them the price, and then they work with you on what they provide, but they have a basic plan that you can bring in, test it out, see if you want to go with that plan, and they have it soup to nuts, so to speak, with everything that you need. Where on the opposite end of the spectrum, you can work with the professionals you have in your schools to go in and look at the content standards that we have, what we want students to know, and work with those teachers to build a specific curriculum plan that you would have across your district, across content areas that would meet the needs of your students. So there's different ways to achieve those things, but that also plays a role into how we're going to be funding and paying for these things.
Okay,
too.
I appreciate you taking the sidetrack with me to explain what that is, because we know what copy machines are, we know what books are, we know what a teacher is, but it's these other components that sometimes get left behind or misunderstood. So I wanted you to do that. Now back to resources. Big issue for the city of Manchester, and I'm just going to make it real. When people talk resources, they're talking money. And when you're talking money in a municipality or in a school district, that impacts taxes. So, I mean, it's important stuff. Now we're where political rubber meets the political road.
Right.
So if that is the biggest issue, what are your ideas for tackling it? Reallocation? I mean,
So
what do
that's
you
the
do?
biggest thing.
What do you do?
The first step is always looking at what you have and seeing what's working, what's not. And that's one of the things I believe when you have a teacher who's there, that teacher is going to be somebody who's going to be able to understand look, here's the things that I see in the classroom that are working with students. Here's the things that we think might work with students, but in practice, they're put in a bookshelf or they put in the back storage closet and they're not actually used.
And there's an expense attached to it that maybe we can capture back.
We can pull that back. And by reallocating those funds that we have in certain areas, we can then figure out where we can have them, where it's actually going to best serve the students and the families. So that's the main thing, having an understanding of the money that we have, that we are spending, and looking where we can reallocate it. And a part of that goes into just a basic understanding of what's going on in our schools and our classrooms, but also from a data perspective. So I'm a science guy. My undergrad's in biology. I've worked a lot with data and numbers, and trying to understand how data actually impacts our decisions is an important thing too. When we talk about things like curriculum resources, a specific plan, for example, that could be one thing where we're trying to tackle test scores, and we want to see how something that we have brought into our schools is affecting tests. And really, when I talk about tests, this is a whole side tangent I can go on. I'm a big guy into student learning, but obviously what we have are our summative assessments, our tests that we can use, or other means to assess our students, see where they're at, and see if what we're doing is working. So by following those trends and seeing how data works, and that's one area, but you have lots of other areas as well, to see the money you're spending. If it's working in the ways you expected it to, great, you can keep investing in those areas. But if it's not, we need to cut those things back and, again, reallocate those funds to where we need things to be.
And that sounds like a constant thing, and it's pretty fundamental. We all do that in our lives. Am I spending money on a subscription that I'm not using? Let's cancel that. Let's move to something else. So, okay, I think if I were to bring 10 candidates for any office that you asked, and ask them what's the biggest issue facing XYZ, they would say, it's the resources. I mean, resources are finite. Desires are infinite.
Right.
But I'm not diminishing your answer. We understand that it is the biggest problem that not only our school districts across the country face. Second to that, if set that aside, it's a big problem we have to deal with. Is there another specific area where you see the Manchester School District could use some improvement?
So there's definitely a few. Definitely, obviously, you want to constantly looking at things. A big thing for me in education, but in life in general, you should be reflecting back on what you're doing to see what's working and what's not working, right? To pretend like just because there's a ton of good things going on, that doesn't mean there's also things that need a lot of improvement don't exist. So it's important that we are balancing those two things and sharing the positives that we have while still analyzing the negative things we have so that we can work to improve and get better on them. Mm-hmm. So thinking about issues, I know one issue that comes up a lot too and has come up that I've been hearing back is working with students in our school and careers to better help kind of drive a path to figure out how students are doing in schools, look at if students are struggling, what are the areas they're struggling in, why are they struggling, and then as we get towards high school, that shifts even more to creating plans of what we're going to want to do in our lives after high school. One of the things
sounds like a European model to me. I've heard of this in Germany, for example, where at a very young age kids test and it can determine their outcome.
So yeah, and I'm not
maybe
saying,
not as rigid as that.
I don't think that's necessarily where I'm going with that. More so, what I'm saying is students, of course, at a younger age are in the exploratory phases, and I believe that education should be all about opening doors and keeping different options open for students later in life. But as we get towards those later years in high school, this is where some students, not all, because some students, they graduate high school and they maybe go to trade school, they go to college, they go into the workforce, and they're still not 100% sure what they want to do after graduating high school, which is totally fine. Everybody kind of develops those thoughts and those ideas at their own pace. But in high school, we should start working with students to help them to really cultivate their feelings and their emotions and their ideas about what they might want to do, what their next steps are going to be. I always like to talk about how graduating high school is an extremely monumental moment in many people's lives. It's one of the best moments in many people's lives. But when you wake up that next day, if you don't have a plan for what's coming next, that can be a really scary, anxiety-inducing situation to be in. So by working with students earlier to kind of help with our guidance departments map out with students what it is that they're liking, what it is that they don't like, where can we work with these students. We have a great vocational program that we have here in Manchester. Maybe we can get you involved with that. Maybe you didn't even know that existed. And a lot of times when I'm working with students personally, I see sometimes students aren't even aware of resources, or families aren't even aware of resources that we have right here in our grasp that can be utilized to help students better develop their skills and their education in a way that's best suited to them. So working to really cultivate our guidance departments and invest in there to help make sure we have have guidance departments that can allocate enough time to meet the needs of all of our students across the board. Because they have a lot going on. We have scheduling that we have to do. We have general meetings with students. We have college prep, and then we have just general life prep. But making sure we have those resources in our guidance department to work with families and students to kind of develop these plans and these ideas. And sometimes that might be right with the student, but I'm a big believer in education. It's a whole ordeal. You need a whole village for every single student. So bringing the family into these decisions is really important too, and having them be a part of the conversation so that they can help guide our students into a place where they can have a successful life after graduation, and also they can then contribute back to their community after graduation.
You know, that's a very interesting, there's a lot packed into what you just said. But what came to mind for me, I'm just about a month or two older than you are. I can remember, you know, as I was a younger person, and the union leader would always put out honor roll, honor roll, honor roll for all the schools. And it was something to be very proud of, but not everybody was on it. Honor roll, honor roll, honor roll. And then you'd read report after report. You know, Central High sends 47% of its students to college, and college. That was the focus, and Manchester was so proud that so many of our students were going on to college, which is a great thing. But what we never thought about, or at least I never thought about until recently, and having discussions like you just had, is what about the other kids? As proud as we're just as proud of them. They're our children too, and we didn't focus on them. And I know that since that time, there's been a major shift in looking at vocational education. We've opened MST here in Manchester. My grandson went from a real struggling student when he finally got into MST through the lottery. He thrived, and it totally made a difference in how he looked at learning and growing up, and it made a big difference in his life. And that was not available when I was a kid. So I know that there is a shift going on in that regard. I know that there are partnerships being built with the universities in the area. Manchester's fortunate to have so many colleges right nearby, and with the vocational schools, the community colleges, as they are now. They used to be Voc Tech, but the community colleges where you can get credit while in high school. These are great things. Is there room to expand that, or have we topped that out?
No, absolutely. I think there definitely is. And right now we have certain programs here that we have in Manchester, but then having experience in other school districts through internships, things like that, you see other area schools that have even more expanded programs. Some of them are based on areas. So for instance, if you look up to Dover, and you can really look at their vet tech program, their farming program they have there, they have a lot going on there, which of course, again, has to do somewhat with the area, the location, the resources they have up in those areas available. But just on a finite level, some of the things that we can expand within what we're already doing are definitely there. We have those opportunities. And you bring up that really good point. And I know a lot of times in politics, when we're talking about school boards and the decisions we're making, we think about it from this kind of high viewpoint, right? We're not thinking about the individual students. And that's a big piece for me. Being there on the front lines with the students every day, I understand that as a teacher, we're supposed to get to know what makes every single one of them tick. What are their drives? What are their ambitions in life? What are their needs? What are their desires? All that sort of good stuff. And having those faces in the back of my mind when thinking about these things and having these discussions, that always really comes up to the forefront of these discussions, making sure we understand that every student is different. And our task as a teacher and as a school and as a school system is to meet the needs of all these students. We're not there just to meet the needs of 10 or 50 or almost all. We're there to meet the needs of every single one to the best of our abilities.
Including the students with the IEPs, and that is something that's a very big issue in Manchester. We have, despite the struggles with our tax base, we have a lot of programs that are not available in a lot of other schools. So we have an extra burden. We have, 72 languages in our school system here in Manchester?
It's very, yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the particular challenges that Manchester faces?
So yeah, the two different groups we're talking about IEPs. We also have
I understand. I've conflated a couple
then,
things.
And then our English language learners as well. But yes, when we're thinking about the resources we need, and this kind of piggies back off of the conversation I was just kind of the points I was making, we need to make sure we're focusing on these students as well. So for instance, IEPs, we'll talk about them separately to an extent. Not only is an IEP something that's there to help the students because it's needs that they have to better access the material that we're teaching and be able to learn effectively. So we have an equitable learning situation for all. They're also the law of the land, right? So we need to make sure that we are meeting the needs of all of our students. And like you said, that includes our IEP students. So we need to take a long, hard look about our departments that we have to see that we are, again, attributing the resources we need here so that we can meet the needs of our students. When students are supposed to have a certain situation where they have paraprofessionals working in their classroom, but we don't have the paraprofessionals required to go into that classroom and support those students, set aside the law part, that's just bad for students, right? In my opinion, we need to be making every single decision on what is going to be best for our students and our families. So we need to do our utmost, our due diligence to be able to supply these things. That goes for our ELL department as well. We have students a couple of weeks ago at the school board meeting. We had a fantastic presentation about our EL department and sort of the teachers that we have servicing our students, things like that. And it was important to know as we were looking at, there was one graph that kind of stood out to me, and it was looking at the number of ELL teachers we have at each school, and then the number of students they service. So it is important to note that when we were looking at those charts, I do understand there was some confusion if you're not a person who is in education every day or is following it that deeply. There was a number up there. I believe it was 1 teacher to 50 students. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's that 1 teacher and 50 students in the room at a time. It means they are servicing those students. Set that aside. That is still a high demand on that teacher to service all those students and make sure they're receiving everything that they need in order to be successful.
Even if it's not as bad as it sounds, it's still a little bad.
Right, exactly. No, and to that point, we need to make sure that we're providing better services to our students. In Manchester, we need to understand our community, I think, better in some situations. We have a high population of students who are learning English, and we need to be able to meet the needs of those students because they are encompassed in our all students that we need to be making sure receive the top education that they possibly can.
How about the issue of poverty in the schools? Pretty reasonably high percentage of our students are getting free lunch assistance. That's kind of the scale that people look at to determine the degree of poverty in the schools. Manchester, that's another challenge that we face. Do you have any thoughts on how to address that?
Absolutely.
I know it's not the school's department to bring people out of poverty, but you still have to deal with it.
In a sense, it can be, though, in my opinion, because in the situations, and this isn't necessarily exactly addressing what you're saying directly, but when we're looking at a situation where we have education, that education is a system where we can have students receive the education they need to go on in life and be successful later on, in whatever success looks like for them. So in a situation, if we have students
like the way you said
that want to be able to get out of a situation that they grew up in, if they receive the education they can and they want to pursue a career that makes more money, then they'd be able to do that. But to address your direct question, and I think what you're really trying to get at here is how do we address the direct needs of our families in poverty? And this year I was super excited to see that our school board did vote almost unanimously to support the free lunch voucher that came from the federal level. So it was funded for us in order to provide free lunches to all of our students. I've seen the direct benefits of this in my own school because my school district chose to do this as well. And it's been awesome to see students eating not only lunch but breakfast as well every single day. And the numbers have been going up. And it starts right there, being able to have students eat their meals so that they can then access their education, but also not be hungry, right? So these basic fundamental things. And part of this, again, to get back to your question, is working with our guidance departments and finding social workers that can work with our students. I know at my school specifically, we have a fantastic social worker who works her butt off to provide for our students and families. And whenever I catch up with her after school in the mornings before the day starts, she's always talking to me about the different situations where she was going to meet with families, or she was putting on food drives to bring in food to give to our families, or for around Thanksgiving time, getting turkeys that she can provide to families and things like this. And these are all coming right within our own schools for our community. So continuing to work, again, to provide these opportunities for having these social workers within our schools and having enough social workers to meet the vast need here in the city would pay dividends on building up our community, building up our schools, and helping to bring us into a place where everybody can live a happy and healthy life.
Well, we've burned through another 1/3 of the show. We're going to take another quick break, regroup. When we come back, we'll kind of finish up. There's a few other issues that I think we, out of fairness to the viewers, need to touch upon, and then we'll finish up the show with your campaign and how people can get in touch with you and other probably more fun things than political issues. So, folks, take a quick break. We will be back in just a few seconds. Thank you very much for staying with us. 640-3091. No one's calling. Give us a call. See you in a couple seconds. We got back quicker this time, huh? I caught you at the fridge. Okay, we'll give folks a chance to sit down, pay more attention. We have a great guest, a wonderful young candidate, Peter Argyropoulos, and I have not missed it yet.
You've been spot on.
So, Peter, it's been really great talking to you, learning a little bit about
Likewise.
you, talking with you about some tough issues. We want to feature you. This is not the kind of show where we do a lot of gotcha stuff or anything like that. But in the city of Manchester, politics ain't beanbag. We got to talk about a tough issue, and especially you're talking about resources. We have a tax cap here in Manchester.
We do.
Address that issue. That is going to impact and influence how you're able to do your job should you be elected to the Board of School Committee. Tell us, what's your feelings on the tax cap? How do you feel you will address it if it comes up?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So with that reality that we're living in, right, as you said, we do have a tax cap here in the city. And over time, this has been something that has come up over time and time again. At this current time right now, it's something that's a hot topic for a lot of people. And to an extent, understandably so. Myself, I live in the city that I love so much. And thinking about it from that perspective, taxes, we're not all made of money, right? We work hard. The people of Manchester work extremely hard to earn a living, to pay for things.
Yeah,
like
this
their
is
houses
this
and
isn't
their food
Bedford.
and their
This isn't
support.
Amherst. This is people work hard here. to make
We
their
work hard and to make our living and to make sure we make ends meet. And some people work paycheck to paycheck, and these are all things that I'm totally understanding of. So when it comes time to look at budgets and things like that, I know I talked a little bit earlier about redistribution of funds and things like that, and I really think it does start there. But at the end of the day, when we're looking at budgets, I think having the tax cap number in mind, looking and seeing, okay, here's kind of what we are working within, and starting from there and using that as a guiding point is something that is the reality that we're living in order to be able to take the money that we have and be able to attribute it to our schools in the way that can best serve our students and families. It is something now, again, like I said, where it has multiple layers to it. When we think about who is allocating money, the school board does vote on it, and then it goes to the board of mayor and aldermen for final approval when we're making those financial decisions and things like that. But it's important that we're maximizing the tax dollars of the people of Manchester who work hard.
Squeeze them until they run dry, right? I mean, that's what you got to do. Okay. So the follow-up question to that, it is the gotcha question, and I apologize because we try not to do that, but you're going to get offers to take surveys from all kinds of news outlets, and usually it's the union leader. They'll ask this question: will you vote to override the tax cap?
Yeah,
Will ya?
I didn't know if there was more to the question. I was going to wait.
Well,
So-
that's the gotcha part of it.
So,
you know?
yeah,
I mean,
no.
it's a bare question with no further detail.
Yeah, when
What's your
thinking,
thought on that?
I mean, when thinking of a gotcha question, does a gotcha question really exist to the extent that, again, public servants are here to serve the people of the city. So in order for them to be able to make that decision, they should understand what candidates are going to do. Now, when it comes to a question like that, will you vote to override the tax cap? That's an extremely difficult question to answer in the context of a hypothetical like this, because we don't have any background information on what it is that we are actually talking about. Overriding the tax cap by $1 million, like what percentage are we looking at? All these sorts of things make it a really difficult conversation, as opposed to you come to the table with a proposal of a budget that we're looking for students, and you have different things attached to it. Here's the 10 teachers we need to provide for our ELL students that we were talking about earlier, or here's the 15 paras we need to hire to meet the needs of our students in our special ed department, or here's what we really need to do in order to hire 5 more teachers at Central High School to replace our retiring teachers, so that we don't have class sizes that are pushing 40 people, which can be illegal in some contexts of lab classes, things like that. So when we're dealing with a hypothetical situation like that, I'm not going to get necessarily down into the weeds of yes or no. At the end of the day, I would look and analyze and make the best decision in the interest of the students, the family, the teachers, the schools, and the community to push our schools and our education forward.
Okay, I'll take that, folks. You heard it here. We've got them pinned down. Another issue that I think it was going on before I was in school here in Manchester. It's the redistricting. And it's kind of a little bit complicated because it's not just redistricting now, it's redistricting as a response to it, and it's been years now, but we lost a lot of students. A lot of towns either pulled their students because we weren't giving them what they wanted for the tuition we were charging, or built their own high schools. So our student population has decreased, and from what I'm reading, it will continue to decrease. Not so sure I'm happy about that. I think the city of Manchester should be growing, and that we should anticipate that at least our student population will remain stable. But it is what it is. With decreasing student populations, we just decommissioned Hallsville School, a school near and dear to my heart. When I was a kid, I went to OLPH right down the street from Hallsville, and after school, my friend Mike Murphy and I would go over to Hallsville because his dad was a teacher at Hallsville, and he'd give us extra classes after school and reading and stuff like that. So I guess I needed it. I don't know, but I really it's sad to see Hallsville close. But if you don't need it, if it's surplus property, isn't that what we're supposed to do? So what are your thoughts on the status of classrooms, population allocation, and I guess that becomes redistricting?
So I guess, for starters, we have to look at and understand why it is that we are losing students. And you bring up the point that it looks like we could potentially continue to lose students, which is an absolute travesty. So when you think about something like that, we need to be able to understand and have the information that we need to go back in and lure these students back. I was a student at Manchester Memorial High School when we went through the process, when a bunch of my friends from Auburn Middle School, the town of Auburn, were going to Memorial, and then they made the transition to go all the way fully to Pinkerton. So the group that was there had the option of going or staying, but then from then on, we had lost those students. So I saw that direct effect right then and there. And obviously, that was just one example of losing students. So we really need to be able to build up our school system so that we're not having situations where people want to leave, but people look towards Manchester and think that is a school district that I want to raise my children, and that's a school district I want to send my family to, and move here and build up our numbers. But in the context of your question of what do we do, obviously we need to be able to make sure that we are making decisions that are effective for our students and our family and our community. And this is obviously a common thread I keep saying, but we don't want to have schools that are overcrowded, but we don't want to have schools that are undercrowded. So by making sure we're actually managing a process where we are creating areas of our city where students are going to certain schools and managing our numbers that way is the best way to go about this at first. glance. We want to have situations where students have their community schools that they're able to be a part of and go into their own communities and live there and kind of grow there. As I mentioned, I grew up right up the street from Jewett, Southside, and Memorial, and it was awesome to be able to walk to school when I needed to, be there right there in my community. I felt like it's home. When I drive by it now, even though I moved a little bit further down the road, I still look back there and I just feel like I'm at home in that situation from that connection I have with my house and the schools. So making those tough decisions is important, and we also need to bring into this conversation the idea of the state of our buildings. So when we consider that, what buildings are expensive to run? What buildings are becoming a liability?
Hallsville certainly was an old, expensive building. There's no doubt about that.
And in some situations, we need to consider the idea that maybe it's more cost-effective over a short period of time to condense our schools and potentially renovate buildings or build a new building here and be able to make that meet the needs of our students if we were to downsize some of our schools. So the key for me, I don't want to shut down any more schools. I don't want that to be a situation where we're losing so many students that it doesn't make sense for us to keep schools open. I want to have students coming back to Manchester. And that starts with improving our school system even more. Because we have great teachers and we have great students who work very hard, but that can only go so far if we're not supporting them in the ways that they need to be supported. So that's step one. But then from there, it's time to make sure we are managing our resources in our buildings effectively.
What do you think of the proposal the recently put forward to kind of build a brand new state-of-the-art Manchester high school and then use the facilities that we have for other purposes?
I am so glad you asked that question because this is one, since the day I've read this proposal and really gone through it, I've had so many discussions and thoughts on it. Being someone that came right here, graduating from Memorial, being extremely proud of that, I was the vice president of my graduating class of 2014, which I'm extremely proud of as well. But the reason I bring that up is in the context of, at first when you hear this idea, giant school, mega school, different wings, so you have your different academies where students are going to the places that best kind of serve what they're doing. That sounds really cool, right? And it might sound enticing to some. But then my whole mission of this campaign is to view things through the lens of students and families. And when I think about it from the idea of a student and how kind of intimidating that might be to walk into a school of that size at that age, when you're thinking 14-year-olds, freshmen in high school, walking in there for the first time, are you going to be able to build that connection? So connecting this back to me being vice president of my school, I got to know, out of the 412 students I graduated with in my class, I got to know just about every single one of them on some level or another over the 2 years that I served in that role. And in a large school setting like that becomes extremely difficult. Things like that. I understand that right now our sports teams, we're having more cooperative sports teams among school because of declining numbers. But again, I want to build up a system where we can have students coming back and playing sports for our schools. It was an enjoyable experience for me as a student athlete. It was an enjoyable experience for me as a student going and supporting my friends on teams. And it really, in my opinion, builds up a greater sense of community here in the city when you have things where you have a Central Memorial or a Central West or a Memorial West football game that you can all go to on a Friday night and share in your love of the community in that situation. So I think a large high school like that, while it's a great idea, and I'm glad it was extremely ambitious into trying to think about how we get students to come back, I don't know if that's the correct answer. But I do think there is a solution where we need to continue to look at the state of our buildings and figure out how we're going to best renovate them and also provide so we have accurate number of students, so we don't have one overcrowded school, one school that doesn't have enough students at it to really fill it up. And that's all part of this redistricting process, looking at potential new buildings, renovations, all these sorts of things to meet our needs.
Well, we're down to about 5 minutes, so if we're going to do it, we have to turn to your campaign now. So
Sure.
I'd like to tell us a little bit about what your campaign plans are, how people can get in touch with you. Do you have a website? Are you on Facebook? What's your email address? What's your phone number if you want to give it? Where are you going to be next week? What neighborhoods are you going to be knocking on? What can people do? There's a lot of questions here. And then at the very
Sure.
end, I want you to look over at that camera right there and give your best pitch for why folks should vote for you. So do all that in 5 minutes.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. So if I forget anything, let me know.
I promise.
So for starters, we'll start off with the contact piece so I don't forget. So ardropolisforschoolboard.org is my website. You can find tons of information there It connects you right directly to my different social media accounts. I do have a Facebook, Peter Argyropoulos for School Board at Large, a Twitter at ArgyropoulosNH, as well as an email that I'm happy to have any dialogue. I've had different people email in over time to ask different questions about the campaign or things like that. So that's Argyropoulos for School Board at gmail.com. So all these are the main ways you can get into contact with me about my campaign, ask me questions. I'm happy to answer anything. I'm happy to have conversations with the voters, and I'm also happy to listen to concerns that you might have about our schools or our community. Coming up over the next couple of weeks, we are going to be firing on all cylinders. So I've been extremely proud over the last several weeks and months to work in this primary. Getting to know the voters in Manchester, listen to their concerns, share my ideas, and just partake in the great community setting that we have here in our city. And I'm looking forward to continuing that. So in the next coming weeks, this weekend, we will be canvassing, knocking on doors every single weekend with our events posted on our social media accounts and our website. So we are always looking for help in that context of anybody who's willing to go out and knock on doors, who believes in supporting schools for our students and our families and our community. We will be hosting events that will be coming up as well. So we'll have some of those announced in the coming days, actually. So those will be on the website. And then, of course, we have visibility events that will be coming closer to our election where, we go out, we hold signs, we talk with voters. I honestly enjoy that experience very much. So all these are different ways to get involved with our campaign, and I'd be happy to work with you on those different things. In addition to that, I just want to say I am extremely thankful, and that's really an understatement, for the support that the campaign has received from the day we announced all the way through the primary election last week. Texts, calls, people putting signs on their yard, people coming and knocking doors, all of these different things that have really driven this campaign and helped to amplify this message. Because what this campaign is really about the people of Manchester and giving back to a community that we all love so much, and helping our schools develop in a way that we can meet the needs of our students and establish that foundation here in Manchester. So I really wanted to express my gratitude again for all of that support leading up to the primary victory that we were able to have, and looking forward to coming up here in the next couple weeks with this final sprint to the end.
Well, you did it. You got all that in 5 minutes. I wish you the best of luck on your campaign. You did a really good job getting through the primary process. Politics in Manchester is tough. As they say, politics ain't beanbag. I like your ideas. I think I hope you feel comfortable coming on the show here. I'm sorry we didn't get any calls. Typically we do, but maybe it's just because you're a new candidate. People are just kind of feeling you out. They're a little nervous about you. But thank you very much for coming on. And folks, you heard how to get in touch with Peter. Please do. And if you forget how to get in touch with him, contact us on our Facebook page. We'll connect you. I want to thank everybody who is watching. We appreciate our viewers. I want to thank the viewer who sent in the letter. I hope you understood that I totally respect the letter, and I hope you can respect my reasons for what prompted the letter. And if we can continue a dialogue like that respectfully, I think we can go a long way to making Manchester a better place. Thank you very much for watching, folks. Next week, we're going to switch it up a little bit. Bob will be back, but the Ancient Order of Hibernians is back in full swing, so I will be over there with them doing our monthly meeting as we get ready for our Christmas toy drive for kids. So thank you very much once again for watching the Progress Report. Bob, we'll see you next week, and I hope you have a great week, folks.